Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call to order tonight's meeting of the City of Santa Rosa Planning Commission and ask for roll call, please.
Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present.
All right. With that, we're going to move on to the approval of our minutes of March 9th and also April 13th. Any comments or corrections on that? Okay, not seeing any. Those will stand as printed. Next, we're going to move on to public comments, which is a time for any member of the public to come down and address the commission on matters of interest to the commission. You don't have to have filled out a card. And those would be matters of interest to the commission that are not listed tonight as a public hearing. So go ahead and open public comments. And not seeing anyone move, I'm going to go ahead and close public comments and move on to Planning Commissioner's report. Yes, Commissioner Groninger.
Yes, I have a report on the May 3rd subdivision committee. And at that May 3rd meeting, we dealt with the request for Diddy Downs subdivision tentative map extension, and the applicant had requested the first of 4 one-year time extensions to be granted by the city. The first would go through October 9th, 2017. The issues at hand were mainly technical in nature and really as evidenced in updating the original conditions of approval. In other words, the request is for updating the those conditions of approval, not for finding development money, in essence. And so, just as an example, some of the ones that we dealt with that day were just the separation between dwelling units. This is a 4-lot residential small lot subdivision. Separation between the dwelling units, common driveway for lots 2 and 4, being 20 feet wide, tapering to 16 to work around an existing valley oak tree, and change gradings and drainage requirements. That's just an example. After the vote, which was unanimous to extend or to approve the tentative map extension, the developer indicated that they anticipate a fall, mid to late fall start of construction as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Diddy Downs, it rivals Pink Viking for our favorite development titles. Okay, any other reports of commissioners? Mark? Okay.
I'm assuming it's okay to mention this. On the way down here today, I had been invited, and I'm assuming most of us have been invited, to take a look at this temporary event. It's a parklet that was located on 4th Street. And it was sponsored by the Urban Community Partnership, and basically what it is, they're trying to test out the concept of putting, in essence, taking a couple of parking spaces, on-street parking spaces, create a, what they call a parklet, very small space bordered by either temporary fencing and or plants and so on, put chairs there, and then in an urban environment, have a place for people to sit. And then typically they're close to restaurants, and they listed some of their favorite restaurants. Mine happened to be the Frosty Freeze that's close by there. But anyway, it was an interesting concept, and should they do this again, I suggest that folks take a look at it.
All right, thanks. Anybody else? Okay. So with that, we'll move on to department reports.
Okay, there's a lot to report. There's a lot going on in the department, so instead of taking the length of time it would take to actually read, and this is just some of what we're working on, but I wanted to give some highlights and particularly some upcoming dates that would be of interest to the commission. So first of all, I wanted you to know that we are moving forward and progressing on a permit streamlining and design review process improvement project. We're working with M Group to move that along. We've done some outreach already with the developer task force. We've also presented and had conversations with the community advisory board, and we are now gearing up to do some joint study sessions with Design Review Board and Cultural Heritage Board, Planning Commission and Design Review Board to talk about overlapping issues, roles and responsibilities, and how can we be more effective in our planning review and design review process. So we are looking at June 15th for these joint sessions. They'll be back to back. I'm trying to be efficient with your time. And so if you can look to your calendars, June 15th, the portion that will include Planning Commission is from 2:30 to 4. We're also underway with a proposal, and these are proposals related to our housing action plan. So we're moving forward with some research regarding density bonus greater than 35%. So as you know, the local ordinance caps at 35% density bonus, but there's definitely some interest to explore under what circumstances would we allow more than that. The state does allow a city to allow more than that. So we are doing some initial research, and then that will go through a similar outreach vetting process before ultimately, if there's an ordinance amendment, it'd come to the commission. Likewise, we're preparing a request for proposals for amendments to our city's housing ordinance, in particular inclusionary housing, so required on-site housing, and we'll be looking to send that request for proposals out in the next couple weeks. The accessory dwelling unit ordinance, we get a lot of questions about what's happening with that. As you know, there's an interim guidance that's available to people who want to explore developing a accessory dwelling unit or second unit, is how we used to call them. Staff has been responding to, we received a lot of feedback on our initial draft, and we see some opportunities to make the ordinance proposal even more respectful of our local community, and so we're making those adjustments now, and we'll probably end up vetting out those. I know we will. What we want to do is send out that revised draft to the same folks and to the community to show how we respond to the community input. So ultimately, we need to do that before we head to Planning Commission. So we are looking at probably not till June coming forward, and probably the second meeting in June would be the earliest we could be ready for a public hearing with the Planning Commission. Medical cannabis, we've been very active with applications and inquiries just in our interim measures, as you know, and we're at 27 applications to date. 146,000 square feet of cultivation have been approved, and that's from this commission. So you've been definitely a big part of implementing the interim measures. 102,000 square feet of manufacturing use has been approved. A lot of that has been permitted by right, so that's been a lot of work out of our department. And we have applications of all the other supplemental or support uses. So we are still working on the comprehensive policy. We're preparing a draft. It's still underway. What's happened in the meantime while we're making our own adjustments is the state regulations have come out. They're out for public comment. I don't know, it's like 700 pages. It's going to take some time to take a look at that. We want to make sure that we're aware of how the regulations might relate to our comprehensive ordinance, since they're both sort of underway at the same time, and seek alignment. There's also a trailer bill that Governor Brown has put forth that we'll be considering, and that trailer bill affects the gaps that are created between Proposition 64 and MRSA, the framework for medical cannabis, and all the regulations that come with that. So there's a lot for us to consider while we're developing our comprehensive ordinance, but we're still trying to push forward to, as expeditiously as we can to get a draft out. So maybe in the next 2 or 3, 4 weeks, we will have a draft to be ready, but we're still working on it. We talked about medical cannabis business tours at the last meeting, and Chair Cisco and I have been working out some ideas for that. We don't have tour dates or a schedule yet to present, but we're looking at an opportunity where maybe one set of tours we look at some dispensaries, and then on another point in time we tour some cultivation sites. So I'm connecting with some opportunities to see if how we can put those tours together efficiently and maybe attach them to a commission agenda so it's already part of your schedule, and how we might logistically do that. So more on that. And then some others are just regional public opportunities. I just want you to be aware of what's happening. Southeast Greenway, we are doing our environmental review scoping meeting, and that's next Monday night, May 15th, at the Bennett Valley Senior Center. Plan Bay Area 2040. There's an open house right now. The preferred scenario of that plan is out for public comment. The city is preparing our own public comments for that. It's going to the city council. I can't remember the date, but we'll be presenting comments for council to consider to put forth with that plan. But the open house is Monday, May 22nd. And then last but not least is training for planning commissioners. We have the opportunity in September for California APA, the planning conference. It's in Sacramento, and I'm going to go ahead and start registering commissioners to attend that meeting. This is the time to do it. You get the best price, so that enables the city to be able to afford your training. So we're going to move forward with that. So that concludes my department report.
Great, thank you. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to statements of abstention by commissioners. And I think you can do it now or at the
Do it
time.
now or do it then?
Yeah,
How about if I do it now?
good idea. Let's do it.
I will be abstaining from, I don't even know which item it is, but it's in the CIP projects for the EV charging stations. Two.
Okay. Great. So with that, we're going to move on to the first of our public hearings tonight, which is a public hearing for the rezoning of the D&J Carriage Homes on Aston Avenue. It is not an ex parte disclosure, and Patrick Streeter is staff.
Thank you, Chair Cisco, members of the Planning Commission. The item before you is a proposal for rezoning of 3 parcels off of Aston Avenue, and that would accommodate the proposed D&J Carriage Homes multifamily development project. That development project proposes 18 market rate multifamily units, and in compliance with our housing action plan, that would reach 0.7% of the market rate units that the city is trying to achieve by the year 2022. The project includes a zoning map amendment that would rezone 3 parcels. They're presently a PD or planned development district, which is a custom zoning district. This would rezone them to R318, which is one of the city's base zoning districts that accommodates multifamily residential development. And doing so would be consistent with the general plan land use designation for the area, and would also accommodate a proposed development project, the D&J Carriage Homes, which has received preliminary and final design review from the Design Review Board. The project is located in southeast Santa Rosa. It's along Aston Avenue. It's about 1,000 feet west of the fairgrounds and about a half mile to the Baker Avenue 101 on-ramp and overcrossing. And the project site itself is currently developed with single-family homes. It's surrounded by various forms of residential development. So to the east is another planned development district, which is a similar density to what's being proposed for this rezoning property. There's a mix of single-family and multifamily development to the north and to the west, and to the south are single-family homes that are presently in the county. There's also to the south a drainage easement that's part of Old Colgan Creek that runs along the property boundary. And it's worth pointing out from this view that there's Aston Circle is kind of an additional road that's envisioned that would run parallel to Aston Avenue. So as properties develop, city staff has encouraged the inclusion of that street. So eventually it'll be connected and provide a full through street. The frontage along Aston Avenue has those single-family residences that were mentioned previously, and the development to the east currently stub ends Aston Circle. So this project that's accommodated through the rezoning would continue that stretch of Aston Circle, which is a public street. The project applications were submitted in June of 2015. The following month, a neighborhood meeting was held to introduce the project to neighbors. Revised plans came in September of 2016 based on requirements for dimensions and parking. The project had to lose 2 units. So originally it was a 20-unit development. It went down to 18 units when it was resubmitted in September. In December, the project went before the Design Review Board and received preliminary design review with some direction on elevations and enlarging the pet play area. And then the project returned to the board in March of this year and received the final design review approval. The general plan for the area envisions medium density residential, which has a density of 8 to 18 units per acre. The project's proposed 18 units on 1.18 acres would reach a density of approximately 15 units per acre, which is consistent with the general plan goal of developing medium density or developing multifamily housing up to the midpoint or higher of the envisioned density in the general plan. The project is presently part of the South Park Neighborhood Development Program planned development. This was a planned community that was put into place in 1973. Since that time, several smaller projects have broken off and rezoned, so the properties immediately to the east are one of those properties that rezoned into another planned development district because they were inconsistent with that South Park planned development district. This project also would have to have a rezoning in order to bring the density up. The district envisions, or the district has a maximum development of 10 units per acre. So in consistency with the general plan and also with the project that's proposed, which would be above that density, the rezoning was requested. So the rezoning would bring those parcels into the R318 district, which, as was discussed earlier, is that multifamily, medium density residential zoning district that is meant to implement the general plan. The project, as was mentioned before, it went to concept design review in 2014, returned for preliminary design review in 2016, and then received final design review a few months ago. And so this rezoning would allow that project to be developed on this site. It's worth noting at this time that that project would be permitted by right in the R3 zoning district, so there would be no use permit associated with it. The project is consistent with the development density that was envisioned through the general plan, and through technical studies, the project has shown that the development project that's proposed would not have any impacts that weren't already envisioned in the environmental review that was developed for that general plan, so no further environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act would be required. Some of the issues that were looked at by staff in reviewing this project included on-site circulation, as well as the aforementioned PD, Planned Development Zoning District. So regarding on-site circulation, staff did require that the project have the city's required dimensions for streets, also that it provide access to the drainage easement, and that it provide the required amount of parking for a development of this size. Those are the issues that resulted in the reduction of 2 units. Additionally, the project is required to include a stub end to the west, so that should the properties to the west develop, Aston Circle can be continued as it is coming from the east. Regarding the zoning, one of the major issues that staff has with planned development zonings, this project originally came in as a proposal to rezone to a PD district. It's restrictive for any future development, so if the proposed project were to change or if a new project were to be proposed for that site, likely a new rezoning would have to take place in order to be consistent with the zoning. So wherever staff has the opportunity to take parcels out of a PD district and move them into one of our standard zoning districts, we usually try to pursue that opportunity. The proposed development project is consistent with all of the standards for the R318 zoning district, so setbacks and parking requirements and so on. Some of the public comments related to the project were in regards to the speeds of vehicles on Aston Circle and on Aston Avenue. Also operational concerns for multifamily development with lighting, rent control, graffiti. Many of those issues are addressed through the city's standard ordinances. And since there's design review approval, those ordinances are conditioned onto the project. So while there's no use permit, a lot of the operational concerns are addressed through some sort of city regulation. Lastly, at the public hearing for design review, comments were brought up about the usage of garages. So other projects have been developed with garages that were undersized. So vehicles were not being parked in them, they were being parked on the street, and there was concern that this would happen for this development. So the architect was sure to include dimension plans for the garages, as well as proposed lease agreements that would require the use of the garages by residents that are staying in the development project. So, considering the fact that the project is consistent with the general plan and the rezoning is something that staff would encourage for parcels like this, the Department of Planning and Economic Development are recommending that the Commission recommend to the Council approval of rezoning of the properties at 818, 819, and 824 Aston Avenue from the PD Planned Development District to the R318 Multifamily Residential District. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Any questions of the staff right now? Okay, great. Is the applicant here wishing to make any presentation? No? Okay, great. Okay, great. And so our role tonight is strictly the rezoning. The project itself is done. So, okay, this is a public hearing tonight. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. And if there are any members of the public wishing to speak on this item, you can come down to a microphone. And I'm not seeing anyone move, so I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And any other questions of staff? Okay, would someone like to move a resolution for the purposes of discussion?
I'll make a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Santa Rosa recommending to City Council rezoning of property located 818, 819, and 824 Aston Avenue, APNs 038-202-016, 018-022 to their R318 Multifamily Residential District, file number MUP 15-008. Waive further reading of the text.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so that was moved by Commissioner Stanley, seconded by Commissioner Duggan. Commissioner Stanley, you want to say anything about this?
I think it's a great idea. It's nice to get our zoning in line with our general plan. I think it's, I like the idea that we're starting to take some of these more suburban PDs out of the mix and getting in some housing in here in what I consider a nice neighborhood fabric. So I'll be supporting the project today.
Okay. Commissioner Duggan?
I'm also in support. I think it's consistent with the general plan, and I think the housing from the architectural plans is going to look very consistent with what's there right now, adjacent to it, so I'm in favor of it.
Commissioner Rumble?
So I echo those sentiments, and I think it's a good project.
Vice Chair Crawford?
I also will be supporting the project.
Commissioner Groninger?
I too support the rezoning, and I appreciate, Patrick, all the past documents that you provided, because you can just see the evolution of where we are coming to today.
Commissioner Edmondson?
I have nothing to add to those comments, and I will support the project.
And I too have nothing to add and will support the rezoning. So with that, again, that was moved by Commissioner Stanley, seconded by Commissioner Duggan, and your votes, please. And that passes with 7 ayes. And I believe that concludes that item. So, thanks. Okay, so we will move on to our second public hearing, which is a general plan consistency finding for new capital improvement projects. This is not an ex parte disclosure, and Eric Gage is staff and will be giving the staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair Cisco and fellow commissioners. My name is Eric Gage, and the project before you is the general plan consistency findings for the capital improvements projects that are part of the fiscal year 2017 through 2018. So the capital improvement program is a 5-year plan cycle, establishes funding priorities for public infrastructure and improvements, repairs as part of the city budget process. And each project must be found consistent with the Santa Rosa General Plan. There are 18 projects new this year that are being added to the plan. California law requires the local planning agency to review each of those new projects and demonstrate conformity with general plan policies. New projects are reviewed by Planning Commission on an annual cycle, and thus all projects in the CIP are reviewed for consistency. So here's a bullet list of categories of different projects. There may be more than one project in each of these, or they may be standalone. As I mentioned earlier, there were a total of 18 projects. The different categories were associated with relevant general plan policies to demonstrate consistency. What follows isn't a comprehensive list, but a selection of projects and the pertinent plan policies that were used to find consistency. So the first one, there are several projects that advance the goal of preserving and improving water infrastructure by replacing and rehabilitating, and in some cases extending aging pipelines, water pipelines specifically, to various locations in the city. There were a total of 7 projects. In addition to the water pipeline replacement, the CIP also included several projects that provided replacement rehabilitation for sewer infrastructure in the form of pipelines, and in addition, several projects that provided improvements to Laguna treatment plant and associated components and the long-term wastewater processing needs of the city and the region. There's one creek restoration project on the list. It will be for Pioneer Creek improvements. That will include it's a restoration project that will include tree plantings, removal of invasive species, and the like. And there are 2 transportation improvement projects. The CIP includes projects that maintain and improve street system. In this case, a pavement rehabilitation project that will replace and repair pavement in various locations throughout the city, and another project that will enhance existing intersections with the installation of new signals. There'll be 35 intersections throughout the city. Staff is recommending approval, and by resolution, finding all the projects consistent with the general plan policies noted, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Any questions of staff on this? Yeah, Commissioner Rumble?
This is really much more of a curiosity question, so I appreciate your indulgence. We are in the process of doing our CIP of the county, and I was a little surprised to see a creek cleanup in a capital improvement project. So I was just wondering what the thresholds or the criteria were that a creek cleanup would trigger that?
I did speak with staff from Stormwater earlier today, give me a little bit more clarification on this project, and it was the result of fines that were levied against a polluter, so it wasn't part of a program, and there weren't any I can't speak to the specific criteria that were applied, but it was not a planned project in the sense that it was on a program schedule. It was something that basically was born out of this enforcement action.
Any other, Commissioner Whitson?
This might be, it's another general kind of question. It might be more appropriately answered by Ms. Hartman, but whoever answers, I'm happy to hear from. When we have to find consistency with the general plan, which we have to do for practically everything that we consider, we always see the very thorough citation in the staff reports of the sections of the general plan that support consistency. And then when there might be a particularly pronounced inconsistency with the general plan, the staff reports go into discussing that and leaving that to the discretion of the commission sometimes to determine whether that is inconsistent or not. But I think maybe I would benefit more from seeing more potentially inconsistent or arguably inconsistent general plan policies to sort of balance out the consistent part of the reports that we see. So maybe just a comment on how that came to be the way that the reports are done and what the rationale is behind that.
I might defer that question to the Deputy Director. Any comment on that?
We can certainly do that in the future. There is always a balancing effort looking at competing policies, and sometimes there's not a direct clean fit with each and every policy, but we can add more discussion piece when we are doing that balancing effort, and we can certainly add that as this moves forward to the City Council. We can, if there are policies that are relatable but weren't used in this report.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, Commissioner Groninger.
Just, again, this is a curiosity question and looking to the future. With the advent of autonomous vehicles coming down the road in a few years, would any adjustments to the infrastructure to make autonomous vehicles flow through the city in a safe manner, would they, in essence, become part of a CIP project? The answer could be possibly, and I'd be fine.
That hasn't been contemplated as part of this cycle. I would imagine that as with changing conditions, there may be a need to address that in future versions of the general plan. The general plan update is coming down the road as well.
Okay, anything else? Okay, great. Thanks, Mr. Cage. And this is a public hearing tonight. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If there's any members of the public wishing to come down and make any comments, not seeing anyone move, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. The first resolution, I believe we can all discuss if necessary. So would somebody like to move that first resolution?
I'll make a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Santa Rosa finding that new projects identified in the draft 2017-2018 Capital Improvement Program are consistent with the Santa Rosa General Plan 2035, file number ST17-002. Wait further reading of the text.
I'll second.
Okay, so that was moved by Commissioner Stanley, seconded by Commissioner Duggan. Any discussion on this? Anyone choose to discuss any more than we have? Okay. With that, that again was moved by Commissioner Stanley, seconded by Commissioner Duggan, and you're voting before I even asked for it. So let's do it. And that passes with 7 ayes. And the next resolution, Commissioner Stanley needs to abstain and leave the room, I believe, or go down there.
Get away from
Yeah,
the button.
I think so.
I'll move a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Santa Rosa finding that new projects identified in the draft 2017-2018 Capital Improvement Program are consistent with the Santa Rosa General Plan 2035, file number ST17-002. And should I mention the exact project he's abstaining from? Okay. And waive for the reading.
Second.
Okay, so that resolution was moved by Commissioner Duggan and seconded by Commissioner Groniga. Any discussion warranted? Not seeing any. Your votes, please. And that passes with 6 ayes, Commissioner Stanley abstaining from that item. And I believe that concludes our meeting tonight, and we'll adjourn to, I believe it's our May 25th meeting.